Okay, so I've been wanting to make this video for a while, and it's what I would have done differently if I did my strongman career again. Now, I don't regret anything I did. Part of where I'm at now in terms of being able to help my clients when it comes to coaching is learning from my mistakes. So it's been a good journey and I don't regret any of it. But if I was to do it again, this is what I would do differently. Right, to start with, I would probably, in simple terms, hire Stan Efferdin as a nutrition coach, and I would probably get Adam Bishop or Chad Coy to coach me. So, end of the video. No, in all seriousness. So, first thing I would look at is hiring a good nutritionist. Now, that's something that I really didn't have an understanding of. Probably some of you could probably judge that just from my appearance and stuff. Didn't really have a good understanding of nutrition while I was competing. Most of what I did was just getting enough protein and making sure I ate a lot of calories. So there was definitely some negative effects to how I planned out my nutrition. I just sort of went with a seafood and eat it option and just make sure I get enough protein in. Now, knowing what I know now, obviously, I would be a lot more structured with my diet. I would also be looking at things like micronutrients, which is something that doesn't get spoken about a lot. When we're talking about nutrition, we always sort of talk about macros, protein, carbs, fats, but also the micronutrients are very important. So I would probably go down the Stan Efferdin approach with a vertical diet where you're eating a lot of beef, bison if you're in America. I personally would keep something like chicken thighs in. I wouldn't go super strict and going chicken breast all the time because an element of fat in your diet is not a bad thing, and also it does help bring the calories up a bit, which if you're trying to bulk can have a positive effect. Now, most of my carb source, if I did it again, would come from rice. Just personally find it very easy to digest. I would throw in some potato meals and some sweet potato meals, but generally most of my food would be rice. Now, when it comes to bulking, you want to be eating foods that are very easy to digest. For me, rice is a good one, and also, obviously, if you're on a budget, buying a huge bag of rice is dirt cheap. I mean, even still now, I can buy a big bag of rice and it lasts me for the whole month, and I'm still eating in excess of sort of 4,500 calories a day. So it is a very cheap option if you're bulking. In terms of the meats, what I would be looking at doing is, like I said, beef and chicken thighs would be the main go-tos for me. And I would always slow cook them personally, just because it enables your body to digest them easier. When you're obviously eating a huge amount of calories, having slow cooked meats is very beneficial because your body breaks them down easier. Because they're already sort of part broken down with the slow cooking, it then makes it much easier to digest. So I would have a lot of rice, slow cooked beef or slow cooked chicken thighs as part of my diet. My body should be able to digest that reasonably well, and I should be able to eat relatively clean and obviously a big amount of food to sort of be in that surplus of calories to get as strong as possible. So those were like my go-tos. Even still now, I sort of follow that principle where I slow cook beef or chicken thighs, have it with rice. It's just very easy to digest, and also obviously hits all the sort of nutrients from that side of things that you would need. Now, because you're having chicken thighs and beef, the fats tend to take care of themselves to a certain extent, but something that I would potentially add in is some avocado sometimes. Goes really well with the chicken and rice as well. So yeah, I would add in some avocado and some eggs as well. I have eggs every morning. So obviously you're getting some good fats from the meat, the eggs, the avocado. I would also, if I wasn't the way I am, I would probably include some fish in there, some salmon. I don't personally like fish, so I tend to look at getting fats from other places, but that is something that if you like it, I would include. Now, when it comes to the micronutrients, so this is where the crucial bit is, you need to include some vegetables, stuff like that. So Some people find that a lot of green veg can make them really bloated and gassy. I personally have that problem where if I have a lot of broccoli, it makes me feel really bloated. So again, going back to what Stan Efferdin preaches is spinach, baby carrots. I find that for me, they work very well. I don't feel bloated. I don't feel like I'm struggling to eat. So adding some sort of, I just get the frozen chopped spinach, little cubes of it, and I just mix it in with my food, and it heats it up, and yeah, I eat it that way. And I have some baby carrots with it as well. Both obviously full of good nutrients, good micronutrients, which your body does need if you want it to perform at its best. Now, when it comes to that type of diet, it can get a little bit boring. Now, this is probably where I do differ in opinion on following the vertical diet. I do personally use some sauces. I obviously don't go crazy with it, but I do feel like it just adds variety and it makes your nutrition a little bit less boring just to add a little bit of sauce. And that way you can eat the same sort of foods regularly, but also you can make them taste different, so it's less likely to get boring and you're more likely to stick to that meal plan just by adding a bit of sauce. I also do like to include some Greek yogurt or skyr, because sometimes that's obviously good, and also they're very good for your gut health. So that's something that I would include in my diet as well. Tend to be sort of evening time, a snack, some Greek yogurt or some skyr yogurt with some protein mixed in. It's a nice protein snack, and also it's something good to have just before bed to keep you feeling full during the night so you're not waking up hungry. Another thing that I do sometimes is I've got a Ninja Creamy, is I make a protein shake, freeze it in the morning, and I have it as ice cream in the evening. So obviously when it comes to setting out your calories and your macros, it's going to be very individual. I personally would go down the route of looking at a TDE calculator just to start with as a starting point. Use that as your sort of initial starting point when it comes to the calories. The macro split, I would go something along the lines of 30% of your calories coming from protein, 20% from fat, and 50% from carbs. That's roughly where I'd be at. Obviously you can move those around a little bit to suit you, but that would be a good starting point in my opinion. Right, now where it comes to training, where I would differ. So I spent a lot of years redlining my body essentially, so pushing myself to the absolute limit very regularly, always lifting super heavy. I didn't really have, especially in the beginning, a lot of structure to my training. It was very much just go in, work up to a heavy set of 1 to 3 reps, then maybe do a drop, like a back off set, and just do that. And that was how I sort of trained my compounds. Now I would be a lot more structured with that now. I would do a periodized training program, where what I tend to do is I do sort of like a method where I periodize my training for 4 weeks, where I increase the weight and decrease the volume by a rep each week. I do 3 sets on each of my compounds, and then I'd have a deload. And then if I hit all those targets, no problem, then on the following week, when I start the process again, I'd try and increase the weight slightly. But I tend to sort of go a little bit off feel. I use the percentages as a guide, but if I'm feeling a bit ropey, then I back it off a little bit. And if I'm feeling good, then I might push it a little bit. But I think so long as you're working in that sort of 80 to 90% range, and you're going to within 1 or 2 reps of failure, then you're going to get stronger. And even sometimes to back off, sometimes you can go even slightly less than 80%. If you're really not feeling it and you feel like your body's beating up, sometimes it's a good idea just to back it off a tiny bit more. But all the time you're in that 80 to 90% of your 1 rep max range, and you're going to within a rep or 2 of failure, you will get stronger doing that. But I definitely one mistake I made, and it was a big mistake, was not taking enough deloads and not giving myself enough time to recover from all the heavy sessions. So I remember going through a period where I did about 4 months where I deadlifted over 400 kilos every week. And obviously that does take its toll on your body. And, you know, although I didn't have serious injuries, I probably could have made more progress by those sessions when something was hurting and things like that. So I would be a lot more structured with my training. Obviously, in terms of that, I would use that sort of method for my compound movements, so your squat, your deadlift, your press, even with your event stuff. In terms of the static events, I would use a similar protocol. Now, with the other events, the moving events, and this is one thing that I wouldn't change, I never really went that much above 80% of comp weight. Now, I occasionally would have the week that I would, but obviously when you're training, you're not just doing one run on the yoke, you're doing multiple runs, or you're doing multiple runs of farmers. So you don't necessarily need to worry about going up to comp weight, because by the third run, if you're working at sort of around 80% and doing it as fast as you can, it's going to feel hard by that last set. And one thing I think that people make the mistake on when it comes to yokes, farmers, loading races, things like that, is people forget that it's a speed event and it's all about how fast you can do it. It's not about who can carry the most weight. Now, if a comp come up where it was a max weight, who can carry the heaviest farmers over 10 meters or something, then obviously I would train accordingly. But generally they're speed events, and it's all more important to focus on the speed of those events than how much weight you can carry. The strength will come from all the other training. So you want to be focusing on getting faster and getting more efficient at the events than worrying about how much weight you can carry. I've seen people so many times doing yokes and they're literally like stumbling along the course and almost breaking themselves, when they get more progress by just backing the weight off a little bit and moving fast and efficiently and doing that, and then gradually increasing the weight from week to week. So training wise, that's how I would probably differ it. I would include a little bit more conditioning work as well. I think conditioning for strongman is quite simple. When you think if you're doing a 5 or 6 event competition, that's essentially 5 or 6 minutes work with a rest in between each minute. So the best way to train that, in my opinion, is to do some HIIT training, maybe 30 seconds to start with of maximum effort with a couple of minute break, maybe even 3 minutes, then do it again and do that 5 or 6 times. That's your conditioning work done. And it doesn't matter that much the exercise. Obviously the conditioning side is all more about your sort of lungs and heart and your recovery and things like that. So it doesn't matter necessarily the movement you're doing, whether it's a rowing machine, an assault bike, sprints, however you want to do it, pushing a sled up and down. There's loads of different ways you can do it, even a kettlebell circuit. But that to me is the best way to train conditioning for strongman. It's a lot of effort for a short amount of time. Essentially, you've just got to do that 5 or 6 times and that's a comp done. So if you can get to a point where you're doing a full minute of effort on the assault bike or the rowing machine and really going for it, and you can recover within 2 or 3 minutes and do it again, when it comes to a comp, you're going to be plenty recovered for each event when it comes up. Okay, now this is a big area that I neglected things, and that was doing my rehab and prehab stuff. I certainly didn't do enough mobility stuff as what I should have done. So now I'm a great believer in, if you're working in full ranges of motion on movements, you don't need to do that much stretching. When it comes to actual stretching, if you always squat deep or you're trying to get into a deep squat, it will stop you getting immobile. If you're always working a full range of motion on shoulder presses or, every exercise, if you work in a full range of motion and allow those to stretch you, you don't really need to do a lot of stretching, in my opinion. But I do think that doing a warm-up protocol for each area of your body when you're going to train a movement is very crucial. So things like if I'm doing overhead pressing, I would warm up my rotator cuffs, whether that be Cubans, internal and external rotation on a cable. You could do a landmine rotation as well. So you just hold it in one hand and just sort of rotate either way. That's another way you can warm up your rotator cuffs. I would also do a lat stretch or some hangs. All these things I would do before training just as a warm up. When it comes to squats, I would sort of make sure that my hips, my knees and everything is nice and warm and functioning well. Now this is something that I really didn't do enough of. I mean, obviously moving forwards, it might be something that I do in terms of actually filming those warm up protocols that I do. And that I would have done if I could do it again. Something that I think would be beneficial for people, just to keep your body mobile. I spent so many years not doing this stuff, and it got to a point where my shoulder's totally immobile now, and I'm really having to work to get back in a position where my shoulder functions properly, and my hips are very tight again. Just probably doing things like squatting to a box too often and not going into a full range of motion. You know, it was sort of, from a strongman point of view, I was always trying to cut every corner I could to lift more weight, when actually I'd have probably been better off on some of the movements working the full range of motion and making sure that I kept myself flexible. It's definitely something that I neglected. And like I said, the warm-ups beforehand was definitely something that I should have addressed more than I did. And I'm probably paying the price for that now. But obviously, like I said, I'm trying to help you learn from my mistakes. So some good warm-up routines, a lower body and an upper body one would be very beneficial to do. And obviously on an event day or something like that where you train everything, do both. That's something that I would find very beneficial if I could do it again. Now on my app and my coaching, I always give a warm-up protocol to all my clients. There's plenty of options on both of like how to warm up and how to get everything functioning as it should, and then obviously go into your workout. Spending 10 minutes doing that before training is going to be very beneficial to keeping your body as it should be and performing at your best through each training session. So that's definitely something that I would change if I did it again. Now the final one, which is the elephant in the room, and not something I will go into too much detail because one, YouTube doesn't like it, and also I don't want to be the reason that someone does themselves some ill health. So I would first and foremost get regular blood work done, make sure that your health is good regularly. There's no point in just getting your blood work done and then jumping on a cycle and going on for a year solid and not getting it done again. You need to get it done a bit more regular than that. I'd say every quarter. That's something that I would definitely recommend. And obviously get someone that knows what they're doing and talking about to look through that blood work and make sure that everything's okay. I actually have spoken to Dave Crossland a few times since stopping strongman, and he's gone through my blood work with me a few times, and it's not been anything excessively bad because obviously I'm not pushing those types of things anymore, but there's still a lot of things you can do if you've got a little bit of a problem, can be remedied just through diet things or supplements. So that's definitely something I would recommend everyone doing. Now when it comes to actually talking about the cycles, when most people, what they do is that I feel they do it backwards. So when they're getting ready for a show, they really increase all their dosages of everything. Now, in my opinion, keeping yourself strong when you're in season is a lot easier than getting stronger in the first place and building muscle. Now, a lot of performance enhancement is based around building muscle, which obviously then can in turn build more strength. So I would personally say that it's probably more important for you to push things a little bit. And I'm not saying doing anything crazy, but the higher dosages would be better off in the off season when you're trying to build muscle. So you're in a block where you're doing a lot of muscle building, not so much actual full-on strength training. When it comes to building muscle, obviously performance enhancement has a huge advantage in that area. Now, when it comes to strength and you're trying to basically teach your muscles to be strong, sort of the neurological side of sort of being strong rather than the muscle building. You probably don't need to be in excessive dosages to do that. It's more, I would say, beneficial to be on higher dosages in the off season when you're trying to build muscle. Focus everything on trying to do that. A lot of volume work, a lot of sort of bodybuilding type training to build muscle. And obviously I would still keep your compounds in because it's good to keep practiced on those, but I would also look at obviously adding in a bit more sort of volume work and muscle building type stuff in the off season. And then in the season, when it comes to accessories, they can obviously be reduced down and most of your focus is going to be on your compound. Now, compound movements are not as great a lot of the time for building muscle as isolation exercises, but they're better for overall body strength. So it makes sense for me to, when you're in that period of trying to build as much muscle as possible, be on the higher dosages, and during the season you're more just sort of training the neurological side and you're trying to just get every bit of strength out of the muscle that you've got. You probably don't need to be on high dosages at that period. Now, if you're obviously going down that route, then I wouldn't say you need to stop completely, but do you need to push things to the extreme during the season? No. And also, I think it can have, when you're trying to push things, it can have a negative effect on your sleep, on your blood pressure, on your overall health. So I would probably recommend higher dosages in the off season when you're trying to build muscle, and then more moderate dosages during the season, because that's more sort of about getting your brain to engage with the muscles. Now, something you could look at using in that period is something like, nootropic type stuff. So it helps your body to signal the muscles to fire, and much quicker and as well as possible. That's probably going to have more benefit. Now, I think that's an area that perhaps people don't go down that often, because they just think of getting stronger as bigger muscles, and that's part of it. But obviously the neurological side is very important as well. So I've personally experimented with a few things like alpha GPC. That for me was quite beneficial. I've even gone down the route of using things like modafinil, and again that has a positive effect on my training. So the one thing I would say is obviously that alpha GPC is purely like to get your brain functioning better, and the modafinil does have a sort of stimulant type effect as well. So you do get a bit of a negative side with the modafinil in terms of it bringing, you get a very high peak during training if you time it right, but then afterwards you can tend to crash a little bit. So obviously that's not a positive thing. But the alpha GPC, actually, even when it comes to sort of working and stuff, if you sort of have got a hectic day with work, it does help you focus more, which obviously when it comes to training, having that extra focus and your brain is functioning at its best, it's then sending signals to your muscles to fire more efficiently. So that's something that I would highly recommend. Alpha GPC is just an over-the-counter supplement, so it's not anything illegal or anything dodgy. So that is something that I would highly recommend, especially during your sort of strength training periods when you're trying to get stronger for competitions. Having your brain function at 100% or a lot closer to it is going to be very beneficial when it comes to getting stronger. Now, I think that's most of the stuff covered, but if anyone has got anything that they would like me to cover that I've not spoken about in this video, and obviously before anyone says it, I'm not going to go into dosages and what performance enhancement they should be taking. That's not something that I really want to do, just purely because I don't want to be the cause of someone taking something and getting unwell. So that's obviously your decision to make, and also there's people far more qualified to talk about that than I am. But if anyone has got anything that they would like me to speak about in terms of what I would have done differently and anything I've forgotten to mention, then please obviously pop that in the comments and I will try and reply to you. But overall, I think those are the main basics that I would have changed. There was a lot of things that I could have done differently, and a lot of things that I learned along the way. So my journey changed, and I definitely feel like I could have been a better strong man if I'd had the knowledge that I have now when I was starting out. So yeah, that's pretty much it all covered anyway. But if anyone has got any specific questions, drop them in the comments, and hope you enjoyed it. But if you are struggling with your training, not sure sort of how to structure things, nutrition, supplements, all of that stuff, then obviously you're welcome to try and sign up to my coaching, which is www.terryollinscoaching.com, and obviously I can help you on your way, and you can use my knowledge and my experience to not make the same mistakes that I did. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you soon.